get settled. Please take your seats. Today in class, we are discussing the Dark Phoenix Saga. Before we get started, we always like to give you guys proper time to set up. So what we're using as source material is the X-Men Legends trade paperback, Volume 2, which is the Dark Phoenix Saga. It actually contains the collected issues of X-Men 129 through 137. Not that that matters, but we're using the 12th printing, so I doubt much has changed since then. That's what we're using for our resources. So if you would like to follow along, you can do that. We actually have this on our site, so you can hop on over to schoolforthegifted.site/podcast/Amazon and grab you a copy from Amazon, or you could look up the actual issues if you'd like, and possibly the trade over at schoolforthegifted.site/podcast/Newcadia, which is our back issue treasure trove of a place. So that's what we'll be discussing today in class.
So, we've seen the Dark Phoenix Saga in the books proper, in the cartoons, in the movies. We wanted to go back to the source. So that starts us, way back in the day. And as we go through, instead of just kind of going right into our thoughts about things, we figured we'd do like a recap of everything for those who haven't read it, so crazy spoilers ahead. As if that can be a thing for something like this.
Yeah.
But
you never know.
True. So we're going to be going through it. If you're unfamiliar with the way it happened in the comics, we'll walk you through that so that you have the same bottle of knowledge. And then we're kind of discussing exactly what things have inspired us through the years, what things we're happy never made it out of the comic books, that sort of thing. So what you have at the beginning is, at this point in X-Men history, they've just survived a major battle. One of the things that going back and reading this in the trade paperback kind of points out is exactly how serialized the X-Men were in this moment, where everything was kind of building on exactly what came before. I know a lot of people out there were like, duh, it's a comic. But a lot of times nowadays, like there'll be a story, and then they'll lead into the next story, and it happens, and it'll have momentary effects, but they're not carried through the same way Chris Claremont was a big fan of doing.
Yes, and that was done very meticulously at that. So, and believe me, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, for example, there are moments in the story that are directly affected by the story beforehand. There's a choice that Colossus has to make later on that he cannot do because of what he had to do in the previous storyline, which is where they fought Proteus, and he ended up having to kill someone, which he was not all right with because, this is still a very young, very green Colossus.
Yes.
Skipping that. So we start off with the X-Men getting ready to hop into, their famous Quinjet and fly home. At this point, when we talk about the X-Men, we have a team of Wolverine, Storm, Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Nightcrawler, and Colossus. Banshee had been a member of the team, but he was hurt in the fight.
He was injured, yes.
Yeah, so he's staying with Moira.
He retired.
Yeah.
Yeah, he retires.
And we also have Madrox the Multiple Man, who's only appearing here because he was in the last storyline, and he's saying goodbye.
Yeah, he elected to stay on the island and help with research. Yeah. With Moira's research.
And this is pre-Peter David, so he hasn't really been fleshed out. He was always a background character before Peter David got his hands on it, so at this point he's like, hey, I'm a guy who's kind of funny in a green suit. As opposed to like a fully fleshed out character. But not important. This is just the first couple of pages and everyone's saying bye. But it's also one of the really cool things about the X books in this era where they took time to be human. And I feel like in a lot of the books today, they only kind of pay lip service to this. Oh, they'll hang out in a bar on a day, or they'll play baseball, but it's not like they like each other and care about each other.
And I find that really weird because comparatively speaking to comics in general, that's kind of what Marvel's known for over the years, is a very human approach to superheroes. They're less, like compared to DC, they're less fantastical about their superheroes. The superheroes are more grounded. So these days, when you have Marvel superheroes, it's not quite the same thing. At least with the X-Men.
Well, I find it's from my opinion, and by the way, if you disagree, by all means, write in below. I'd love to have a conversation about it after this conversation about it. But what I find is with the pacing, they try to fit those beats into the fight. Oh my God, you were hurt, let me help you. Or, hey, we're about to watch a movie. Oh no, this place is under attack. Like, they're scared of there being, it's almost like they're frightened of downtime. So those beats have to kind of burp out. Where, back when we're talking in the Claremont era, pros and cons of Claremont, but like, he was willing and able to take that time where you can spend 2 pages of people just saying goodbye to each other like human beings. But back into the story. So the X-Men are leaving. Once again, when you get to the 3rd page in the story, you get to the first sign that Colossus is kind of still rolling over what happened in his mind. He's like, the dude was evil incarnate, but I still killed him. Like, it's gnawing at him. Mm-hmm. But that's when in the collection they introduce you to Mastermind, who's at this point has been using his illusory powers to make Jean feel as though she's been slipping back into like a former timeline or a former self, where she was being wooed by this gentleman named Jason Wingard. This has been having in previous comics, but the collection Chris Claremont always does a good job of catching you up. Sometimes too good a job catching you up.
I definitely agree with that, yes.
But he's never going to, no matter what issue you pick up, he's going to let you know what's going on. Even if you've read like 5 issues in a row and you've had to read 5 times. But you always assume your comic is the first comic someone's picked up. So she believes she's slipping into the past memories of her time with Jason Wingard. And in these past memories, he's wooing her, and she's finding that it's kind of talking to a part of her that no one ever speaks to. And this, I think, is some of the most interesting stuff that doesn't get picked up in other media. But I'm sure we'll get back to that.
Sure.
All right, so that happens. She flashes back to reality. She's with Scott. They're in a relationship. They love each other. Happiness happens. They get home. The professor's there. The professor's been absent for a bit. And he's kind of being a dick. Yeah,
which is, from what I gather, is not your typical Professor X, like, ever. He's not a dick. This is kind of uncharacteristic for him.
Well, what I really like in this story is that what you have is Professor X dealing with his own pettiness, which I don't think they allow him in most X-Men stories, because he has been away for a while because this new team is following Cyclops, and he resents Cyclops for this. And not only does he resent Cyclops for it, but he's new to dealing with adults in this sort of way. So there's a sequence that happens early on where Wolverine storms away and the professor gives him demerits.
Yeah, 10 demerits.
Yeah, so it's like, like Wolverine is going to go, oh man, bub, if I get another 10 demerits, I'm going to have to stay late after class. Or, according to the first cartoon, all right, bub.
Yeah, right.
So Cyclops tries to talk to his mentor, which agitates the professor even more because he's not used to being that student anymore. It makes him look like a complete asshole, but I think it's a neat bit of character development for him, having been away so long, him being away from everyone so long. He has to readjust. He's not perfect. But then we jump into the flux of the story. And the way we jump into the story is Cerebro detects 2 mutants. And it's the trips to get these 2 mutants that thrust us into things for a couple reasons. 1, it gets the team out of the house and into places where they're unsafe. And 2, at this point it's revealed that the Hellfire Club, most of you listening to the broadcast should know who the Hellfire Club is. If you don't, not a problem. Hellfire Club is the old money, politically powerful group of secret mutants who run that Studio 54 for politicians and people who know amazing things that nobody knows of. And they're aware that the X-Men exist, and they've bugged their house. So they're watching them at home, they're recording them, and what you have is the White Queen watching what's going on, and all these people, and we'll talk a little bit about them later. but you also have Wingard, who is a member, but not as high up as he wants to be.
Yes.
And this is his play for, like, really impressing them and joining into the ranks.
And you have to keep in mind, too, that this version of the Hellfire Club, there are many, many members, but the ones that the story focuses on are like a core group of just a handful that are like a group within the group.
They call them the Inner Circle, and they named them, the king, the white queen, the black king, the white queen, the black queen, after chess pieces.
Yes.
The idea being they're the true movers and shakers behind this,
Behind all the pawns.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So at which point we flash over to Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde at this point was 13 and a half years old. That important age, that says she is crazy young, but old enough to have adventures and think for herself.
That's where the half comes in.
Exactly. Because if it was just 13...
No adventuring.
Exactly. So for all those out there, if you're 13, wait a couple months...
And then you can adventure.
So what they do here, which I think is really fun, and which is one thing that Claremont does extremely well, is he changes gears. He takes us to Chicago. He introduces us to the regular life of a person. In that, he also has the White Queen in her civilian identity of Mrs. Frost trying to recruit her to the Massachusetts Academy. So you have both the way Kitty interacts with her parents, you have the world she comes from, you have her headaches from her powers just beginning, and you're really getting the audience, all of us, to kind of enjoy this character and know where she's coming from before they, in the process of putting her in danger. And I really enjoy this because I feel like this scene where, she comes home, they're talking with the White Queen, her powers show themselves, but no one sees it, and she tries to hide it like any person would before the X-Men show up and take her out for ice cream. I feel like in this scene, they're doing what would happen in a modern comic book in like 2 pages. But it's like, oh, there's this girl, oh, she's in peril, follow the adventure. But in this story, just by adding 1 or 2 extra pages, we feel like we're part of this person. Like, we feel like she's a friend of ours. And I think that's an important change. Where nowadays we end up with way too many characters that haven't been fleshed out, where we'll connect with something about them, but other people won't, so they end up getting slaughtered in crossovers for no reason. Not that I have issues there. But here in this book, the White Queen comes, has a conversation with her parents. She has feelings about that. Professor X comes through with Storm, Colossus, and Wolverine, and they have a conversation, and, Storm takes her out for ice cream because Storm is amazing, and they get into a conversation, and they're having a great time. And, Wolverine is being cantankerous because that's what he does.
That's exactly what he does.
And Colossus is there as, at this point, he's the older, tougher, fresh-faced version of Kitty.
Yeah.
Because at this point in the X-Men tales, he's always been a farm boy from Russia. He's never seen most of what's going on. So Claremont is always great at bouncing characters off of each other. And Wolverine and Colossus were naturally made at this point in their development to be played off one another. And lo and behold, what happens? But we have 3 armored men crash into the ice cream shop. Turns out that the Hellfire Club has decided they're capturing the X-Men. These people are in suits designed to help them fight the X-Men. So when Wolverine uses his claws and slashes at the armored man who's fighting him, he has a force field so that the claws won't slash through him. When the one attacking Colossus, hits him up with a flamethrower, it's designed to be so hot that even though he's metal, he feels the pain. Kitty, who's just brand new at this point, instinctively freaks out and jumps through a wall because she can. And that's the safest place to be. So at this point, we have the X-Men fighting 3 people designed to beat the crap out of them. Each of them realize, man, I'm not hurting them. Which is when Wolverine goes, hey, let's see what happens when we switch. Which is one of the first scenes without Cyclops around where they're able to support each other and help each other out. Mm-hmm. Wolverine destroys the one who's giving Storm a bad time. She takes out the one that was beating on Colossus. He knocks the tar out of the guy who was messing with Wolverine. And you get to see two things. One, you get to see these three people in a friendly environment and how their behaviors are. Then you get to see how they react to danger. Then you get to see how they interact with each other and help each other and support each other. And then, bam, they get dropped by the White Queen because she's the White Queen.
Yeah.
So, you have a great sense of elevation. It's like, oh my God, these are our heroes. Oh my God, here's a threat. But no, they're too smart for the threat. They're too strong. They can do this. And then, yeah, but we're going to introduce a new villain who's even bigger and badder. And then we're going to drop. I mean, this is classic. I love this. So her and her goons, they kidnap them. They're probably some of the smartest goons in history because their first response is, all right, check them out, make sure they don't have any lock picks, make sure they don't have any, gear, crazy gear on them, check them for signaling devices. I don't want none of this happening. We're going to do this right. The only thing they're not looking out for are the mysterious powers of a mutant they don't know exists, which is the thing that actually ends up spoiling their plans. And by that I mean Kitty Pryde walks through the wall, hides, and gets an idea of what's going on. And why is this? Not because she's a hero, not because she likes getting herself into trouble, but because the creepy lady who was bothering her parents earlier had her friends who bought her ice cream jumped. And she's concerned about them. There's nothing more human than that.
Right.
And once again, we're not caught with plot contrivances. We're not caught with people acting strangely. It's, oh my God, this is dangerous, let me get out of here. Wait a second, I can't let them just, oh man, this is stupid, but let me take a look. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone has been in a situation where something like that has been running through their mind. Man, this is stupid, but I just gotta, don't fuck with my friends.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, this is a PG-13 broadcast. That's my one F-bomb. Sorry, I had to do that. Which brings us to the other mutant. Well, the fun of this is splitting the X-Men team into two units. So in this one, we have Nightcrawler, Cyclops, and Jean. At this point, Jean has been having power spikes that have been worrying Cyclops. But, you have the leader of the team, the most powerful member of the team, and a guy who's crazy athletic and can teleport. That's a pretty good squad.
It is, but keep in mind, too, ladies and gentlemen, this decision was made by Professor X. This wasn't Cyclops' doing.
I think that's a neat point, because I feel like I think Cyclops would have had different lineups.
Yeah, and that's why I bring it up.
Yeah.
Clearly there's that back and forth with him and the professor, hey, we're not teenagers anymore. Please respect my authority, yeah, or my team leadership. And clearly Professor X is having issues with that, but the moment there's trouble afoot, without hesitation, he's just like, you guys are going to New York, you guys are going to Chicago, that's that, go.
And that's without even understanding the new team dynamics.
Yeah, he picks for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which I found really interesting.
I find that really, I've never really thought about that specifically, and I think that's a really telling place of where they were at the time. I feel like I never really got to a bottom of why the teams were split in that specific way, but thinking about it now, I'm certain that Cyclops would not have made that choice on his own.
Yeah, I mean, for all intent and purposes, Professor X made that split-second decision on the X-Men he knows, which are teenagers. So it would be, logically and naturally, it would be a different set of choices for Cyclops.
And going into that, it's also, Cyclops and Jean, you guys always work together. You guys have worked together since the beginning of whenever. You guys go and we'll have Nightcrawler assist you, and the rest of you guys, you go that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
I also wanted to ask you, so they're in New York. They're hunting down the other mutant at this point to figure out who this person is and possibly recruit them. But I wanted to ask you, how much are you saturated with the idea of a micro cerebro?
I was thinking about this as we went into it, and for those listening, what he's talking about is when they arrive in New York, trying to hunt down the mutant that was there. Jean Grey, obviously a powerful psychic, she can scan people's minds and try to find information. But Cyclops is, a dude who wears giant ruby glasses in order not to blow the roof off with his eyes. So he doesn't have a way to figure this out. But what he does have is a watch that serves as a micro cerebro. Now, my thought about this was very specific because they specify when he's thinking about it that it's not per se, the entire cerebro squeezed into a watch.
No, not.
But what it is more like a barometer with the information of the person in it, and it's just pointing to whoever has that information. So I feel like while he's calling it a micro cerebro, it's more like Cerebro picked up this thing, we collected the information, and this watch is pointing towards it.
Yeah.
Like, if I get close, it'll alert. I mean, I feel like that's all the difference in the world. It's...
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Cerebro is the internet itself. And, the professor cooked up a really fancy watch with a Where You At app.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, when I first read Micro Cerebro, I'm like, fuck you.
Yeah.
I guess we're not PG-13 anymore.
Well, you can have my F-bomb there.
There we go.
We're still PG-13.
Woo! Tag team. So they go, Cyclops with his Micro Cerebro, Jean with her psychic powers are going into this kind of seedy nightclub. And what I think is fun about this is Nightcrawler is kind of stuck. They're like, yo, you can't come in because we're going to have some serious issues if you do. Because you look like a demon and people are a-holes. They don't quite go there, but it's understood. And, I've always enjoyed this. Obviously, I don't enjoy him being left out. But I enjoy them deciding not to go with image inducers.
Well,
I always felt like that was a cop-out.
He makes that decision.
Yeah.
Like, he was given the...
Yeah, like Professor wanted them to use image inducers.
Yeah, and he was given a choice, I guess, but he decides not to. He decides not to go with the image inducer.
So they end up in there, and they're checking the crowd, and they can't find anything. As they're checking through the crowd, they flash back to the Hellfire Club, and at this point, the Professor has been captured. You didn't really see that happen on screen, but seriously... He's a dude in a wheelchair who's never been in a fight. I mean, sure, he has a great brain on him, but you catch him by surprise and he's done for.
Yeah.
So he's been captured. Colossus and Wolverine and Storm are all pretty much screwed at this point. And you have Kitty kind of watching the conversation between the members of the Hellfire Club, getting the story on what's going on. Then you get a quick recap of the issue before. It kind of progresses in really fun ways. Kitty sneaks Storm her tools to get out. The Hellfire guys chase after her. She jumps through the floor because no one knows she can do that yet, and everyone's like, oh man, that's cool. Then we go back to Jean. Now at this point, she's in the club searching. Our friend Mastermind, a.k.a. Mr. Wingard, is there as well. So he's able to use his powers to make her think she's in the past again. At which point in that past fantasy, they get married, and he has her transition into the Black Queen, the asking all of her repressed instincts to step forward and take over. That's really what the Black Queen is. And, he kisses the bride, at which point she wakes up, quote unquote, and she's in actual normal reality. And I think, what I dig about this is I don't think it had, I know that it was with the storyline and he's manipulating her and he's a jerk, but man, he's a creeper.
Yeah. I don't know how to feel about this per se. I agree with you, but let's think about it. He is manipulating everything about her mind.
Mm-hmm.
And to sit there and call him a creeper, one, that doesn't do it justice, but also two, where's the barometer? Where's that range of creepiness? Because let's face it, everything he's doing is creepy.
Yeah.
It's just on different levels.
Well, like, one of the things I love is the way they draw him when you actually get to see him for real. Mm-hmm. Because it's almost like because he looks like a greasy little, I'm going to drop some pills in your drink type of dude.
Yes.
And that's what he's doing, with his powers. Later on, it's revealed that the X-Men have encountered him before. He has the ability to make illusions, but because of the way Queen's technology, he's able to project his illusions into Jean Grey's mind. And that's what has her so confused. And that's what has her reacting the way and assuming things are the way she is. What's bad is that since it's directly into her mind, he's not just creating illusions based on what he thinks, but he's creating illusions based on her fantasies that she doesn't tell anyone. So, like, there's the invasion of privacy through the technology, and then his manipulation of that, aka stalkerish crap, bull, that is pulling her along, and then his physical manipulation of it when he comes to, like, kiss her in the middle of the club. Like, this is epic level sleaze, but we'll get back to epic sleazoid. Now, because Jean doesn't know what's going on, because Scott doesn't know what's going on, he turns around and he sees his girl, like, kissing on some dude out the blue, and he's like, what the hell? And before they have a chance to have a conversation about it, but now they see the brand new mutant, Dazzler.
Super Disco.
Well, that's how she's introduced. I'm Super Disco. So Dazzler is, an amazing performer who puts on a crazy laser light show, and everyone's like, whoa, you are the disco queen. While this is going on, Kitty makes it to a phone, which one of the things I really love about this, and it's just a nitpick on my part, but she's in the middle of this Hellfire Club mobile facility where they have, like, cages that prevent superpowers from being used, and, like, mind control rigs, mind zapping rigs that they use to pump the professor for information. And this is the 80s, and they have, like, the only flat screen TV that's, like, 5 feet wide. And she runs up to, like, a blue coiled phone with the little numbered dots on it. And I understand, this is what phones look like, but, she's got, like, running weird computers in the background all over the place. It feels so out of place, but I'm very entertained. So she makes it to a phone, and she calls the X-Men, the number that Storm gave her. And Nightcrawler hears the phone in the car ringing, so he goes to check it out. And he finds out what's going on right before he gets attacked by one of those guys in those big robot suits. And that dude is designed to be able to take down Nightcrawler. But Nightcrawler is crazy athletic, so that ends up being a fight. As everyone is being dazzled by the powers of Dazzler.
That's what she does. She dazzles people.
The only reason I say it like that is because Chris Claremont does an amazing job of making sure you know what people's powers are, but sometimes he does it over and over again. So, in the first issue, you're like, it's such an amazing array of lights that everyone's minds are like, oh my god, I can't operate. And then when you're in the next issue, it's like, I'm going to find a new way to say it's such an amazing array of lights. And you're like, dude, I read the last issue, I get it. Not important, though.
I sat down to do research for this episode, and I wanted to reread it because it's been a while.
Yeah.
So the trade paperback that we're referring to is about 190 pages. And I'm at the library, and my wife is like, are you going to go through all 190 in one sitting? Like, she knows I read a lot, which is, it's not an issue, but I'm like, you have to understand, it's Chris Claremont, so, like, 45% of this is probably recap.
That's harsh.
Well,
I'm sure it was only like 20.
All right. Can we meet in the middle, say like 30, 35? But yeah, he does. That's kind of just one of the things he does. And you throughout the years, the more Chris Claremont X-Men you read, you get cynical about it, kind of. You know, which to each their own, but it is a double-edged sword. Like, it's great that you can pick up just any issue and realize where you left off, but it does get annoying at times.
Well, I think it's amazing that he does it. I just think that the way he does it is it's wordy. And that's what gets unwieldy.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not a problem. It's actually a boon when you first pick up the book. Because you're watching this lady who's a goddess who rides on the waves. And she can, like, fling lightning bolts and, like, you know, pull mists out of nowhere. And, you know, she can blow cold winds and chill you to the bone, but like someone locks her in a closet and she's freaking out. But in a Chris Claremont book, it's like, oh my, well, she got locked in a closet. There's some device that doesn't let her get out. And man, you know, when this building collapsed on me, and you know, I feel like that again, and I'm freaking out. And you're like, oh, that's why.
Yeah.
But then you read 10 issues, and she's been locked in 2 closets. Well, you know, not locked in 2 closets, but you know what I mean. Like, she's been in a similar situation 2 more times, and you've read that same 1-page speech about her past, and it...
We made the conscious decision not to partner with IKEA because of Storm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Where were we in the story? Dazzler is performing, Nightcrawler is attacked, and then bam, 2 more of these guys jump in to attack Jean and Cyclops. So what you see in this one, which I think is telling, is where in the fight with Wolverine and Storm and Colossus, they broke in and assaulted first. In the fight with Cyclops and Jean, they break in and Cyclops immediately launches an assault. Because he is the leader, because he is the more tactical minded, where the others were responding like, oh my god, we're freaking getting ice cream. He's like, you know what I mean? Cyclops is like, let's do this. So, you know, the first one uses, and what I think is also really cool is, in the first assault, they're like, man, our powers aren't doing jack. They're able to harm us more than we're able to harm them. Let's switch. Cyclops' first thought is, yo, that thing that he used on Jean is like what the professor fixed in the danger room. How do they know about that? Like, he's already a step ahead. And I love that in the storytelling for this character, because I feel like that disappears completely when you make it into the movies.
Yes.
Like, that, like, no one gives him, like, the reason he's Cyclops, leader of the X-Men, is because his first thought is, oh my god, he hit Jean with that thing. But his second thought is, they shouldn't have that tech. There's a reason why they have it. They've done something to get it.
He is completely and wholly responsible for his team, and that's the Cyclops I grew up knowing and loving. Like, over the years you can make the argument that he's just like the mother hen of the group and whatnot, but that's what he's there to do. He perceives himself as team leader. He's going to act accordingly.
And if we end up debating about Cyclops in the notes below somewhere for any of these sessions, realize that's where I'm coming from. Like, Cyclops is that leader who was tutored by Professor at the beginning and decided, you know what, I'm going to continue on, but I'm not going to be above my team, I'm going to be with my team. So, in this point of the story, Jean's been blasted by this ray designed to kind of scramble the way she thinks. The other one, like, kind of goobers Cyclops in the face with what can only be described as ruby quartz Play-Doh.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption.
At which point, what happens in this situation, the villains have this perfect plan that they've unleashed, and they're disturbed by the mutant that they weren't ready for. You know, Dazzler sees what's going on, these 2 guys in robot suits assaulting people in the middle of her show, and she responds. She dazzles one of them. In dazzling that one, the other one comes out to attack her. It gives Jean a chance to react. She frees Cyclops. Cyclops drops the other 2. And Nightcrawler, who is just dynamic enough to give the one who had jumped him a run for his money, brings the fight to the other X-Men. Why? Because he's a team player. He's not making a good go of it on his own. Bring the fight to where the others are so they can assist you. And in doing that, Jean Grey ends up stopping them, and they're not captured. So in this spot, Nightcrawler reveals that the others have been captured. Dazzler is like, what is going on around here? And Cyclops is like, yo, you're a mutant. That means people are gonna... and I love that moment. He's like, have you ever wondered where your powers come from? She's like, no. And he's like, you're a mutant. You have powers. those guys who attacked us because we're mutants. Like, we didn't do anything to them. And she's like, are you serious? He's like, look around. What do you think? It's like, if you're fine on your own, you do that. But if you want to be safe, we got your back. And
I also love here how Chris Claremont has given each of the henchmen that are fighting the X-Men names, which is something that most writers don't do. They're just random henchmen, you know?
yeah.
But, you know, you do have, you know, as they're battling the X-Men, you see them calling out essentially like battle plans and strategy to one another using their last names. And I'm like, that's cool as hell.
Yeah. Like, that's something that I have often overlooked. And I agree with you. Like, just one of the things that makes Claremont is that adherence to all the tiny detail. Like, even as they're leaving, they see the Vanisher, and the Vanisher, you know, sleazy goon that he is, makes sure to project the image that he wants them to see as they leave, because he's playing the long con. He's really trying to work Jean's brain, and even being seen in the background so that she thinks about him later is part of his plan. So after that, they bring us back to Kitty Pryde. And what I love, once again, because this is very serialized and it's broken well into chapters, is Claremont always gives us just enough before switching back to the other side and keeping us with it, so that there's resolution, but there's also something taking us forward. You know, yes. The X-Men get jumped in the club. They defeat the people in the club, but the villain is still there, and their friends are in danger. What are they going to do? Bam. You know, Kitty, Wolverine, Storm, and Colossus get dropped. But Kitty is there, and she's an innocent, and she goes to help them, and then the bad guys see her, and she's just able to call the X-Men and escape, but she's still running, and they're still after her. Like, so now they cut back, and she's still running from the bad guys. And as she's going, the X-Men finally find her, but she doesn't know who the X-Men are. And I think that was and I think it leads to some fun moments. You know, bad guys are chasing her. Jean goes and trashes the car, like, roar! Where I feel like in the past, she would have maybe helped scoot Kitty out of the way. Or Colossus would have stopped the car, or whatever. But this whole story is about Jean and the way she's changed and the way she responds to things differently. And here, it isn't, let me try to figure out a way to stop this. But no, she just becomes a brick wall. Like, one thing I love about the panel where they run into her is you literally see one of them flying through the windshield.
Yeah.
Like, this is the sort of destruction that might have horrified her in the past. Like, I love when they show Kitty responding to it. She looks like she's just seen a monster show up. And then immediately afterwards, Nightcrawler teleports to her. So it's like you have this girl, and she's just having this great conversation with this white-haired lady who's this amazing woman, and she gets captured, and now, like, this crazy chicken spandex with flying hair and fire all around her smashes a car, and a demon shows up and appears before her. You know, like, I love the dichotomy between the two sides of the X-Men being shown here. And what's her response, you know, where we saw Colossus earlier, he's like, I can't believe I killed someone. You see Jean afterwards, and she goes, I trust you'll think twice about hounding mutants in the future. And Cyclops checks in, he's like, you okay? And she's like, never better.
Yeah, there's no remorse behind her action.
Yeah.
Whereas previous, you know, the Jean we know would try not to even get into that situation.
Exactly.
You know?
And this is one of the things that a really great job of in the story is in these moments, like the next part, you know, you didn't feel the girl's terror or the thoughts of these killers chasing her. I'm a telepath. I did. These animals got no more than they deserved. And in this moment, it's like, you're not getting, ha ha ha, I'm evil, Jean. You're getting, these people are monsters, and I stopped them. Like, that doesn't make me bad. And I think that's something we can all relate to, and that's something that makes it chilling and scary.
Yeah.
So, obviously, Nightcrawler's like, yo, she ran away from, you know, the crazy lady who, like, smashing cars in the street, and me, like this random demon dude who just appeared before her with the smell of fire and brimstone. Clutched her, and then disappeared, bringing her somewhere else. I'm not sure why she ran. So then Cyclops immediately is like, you know what, Jean, I'm a dude with a big old visor stuck to my head. I don't know Dazzler, and she already ran from Nightcrawler. You should go talk to her. Like, you actually look like normal people. So Jean uses, her amazing mutant power of changing clothes really quickly. and it's silly to me in the moment, but the idea is big. Like, she is changing the molecular content of what she's wearing.
Yes.
And Chris dives into that more later. But in this moment, it's like, he says, psychokinetically rearranging the molecules of her costume. She's doing something that on the base level is really cool, but when you just kind of glance at it, it's silly.
Yeah, well, there's the panel where she's going down into, like, the basement of the club, I believe, and she finds Kitty, and you kind of have, if you're not ready for it, or if you're not familiar with it, you have to do a double take. Like, wait a minute, is she wearing a skirt now?
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
So she finds Kitty, and this I thought was amazing. Like, what happens? She finds her, she calms her down, and Kitty just grabs onto her and starts crying. I feel like a lot of times when they introduce younger characters, they respond like kids say they would respond, more so than the way kids would respond.
Now, are you talking strictly about, like, a Claremont era story, or?
I'm talking about Claremont versus now.
Okay.
I feel like, you have a kid in a story nowadays and they're like, oh my god, someone's trying to kill me, I'm gonna kill them. And then maybe they'll go into shock. Or like maybe they'll be like, I'm okay, and then they'll have stories about it later. But this is a 13-and-a-half-year-old girl who went out for ice cream and has been running for her life ever since. And someone nice shows up, she feels safe, she starts crying.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's perfect, and I kind of feel like we're getting away from that, and that worries me. So, they find her, and now that she's there, they bring her to someplace safe, and you finally get a scene of the X-Men as they are right now. Nightcrawler, Dazzler, Jean, Cyclops, Kitty Pryde, and the people they've captured. They're taking a moment, and I feel like this is the part where they'd be like, okay, how are we going to find this information? But no. He's like, no. I'm going to get this shit. And I think this is another great moment because Cyclops gives her permission in this moment. If you're paying attention, he goes, I'm through tangling with shadows, mind scan our prisoners, and find out what we're up against. Our friends are in danger. We just had to save a little girl in the middle of the night. We got jumped in this club. We don't have the ability to be nice and polite about it, which is almost like opening the door a little wider for Jean. It's like, you guys are scared about what she's doing, but you're in a situation where it's good, so you're embracing it. So she does. And then she gets the whole spiel on the Hellfire Club. She knows what they know, which wouldn't be what Wingard knows, because that's his plan, that's inner circle stuff. These are just thugs. But they know who their boss is. They know that there's an inner circle because they're directly their people. And then she thinks back to her time slips because Wingard has been seeding this the whole time. She's like, wait a minute, that dude I'm married to, his name is Jason Wingard. He's a member of the club. Holy crap. And what I love about her quote-unquote time slips are that, one, she's not really talking all about that with Cyclops, because it's almost like living a fantasy novel for her.
Yeah.
So she's not comfortable with that conversation. And two, it's an excellent deduction based on what she knows, because she just knows the time period. She just knows that it kind of happens in and out. She has no idea she's being manipulated. She has no idea that it's only when this person's in specific areas, because it keeps happening in different places. So I love that she's being proactive and trying to figure out what's going on, rather than letting it all come to her. Another thing that I love about this, like, you're seeing the good in all these different characters as you're going. So after that, you have the guys show up with the X-Men all beaten and tied up in the back, which I think is an amazing, like, okay, we know where they are, let's drive right in and take care of this.
They have names. That's Sal and Elton.
I'm sorry, I forgot to...
I just think it's cool. I think it's cool that they're not just henchmen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Especially since they all wear like those masks that make their faces indiscriminate, so you can't even tell who's under there.
Right.
To make that a choice and then go back and give you their names too. Like, I love that. So Sal drives them in. under the mind control of Jean. And what I love here is that you don't have the super criminal who knows everything, even though she's a mind reader. You know what I mean? Emma Frost goes, "Oh, you captured him. Well, hell, that's really cool. But you know what? These guys are pretty beefy. I'm going to send some troops just in case." You know what I mean? It isn't, "I knew your plan all along. Sal never comes to the gate that way." And I feel like that's an overdone trope that really kind of poisons a lot of fiction these days. And I love that she's just being careful. And that is her character. And that perfectly fits with what's going on.
I mean, to think about it, for those of you who are familiar with chess, the queen piece, it is a very careful piece. You do have to have a lot of caution with movement in that piece, with that piece.
If you're using your queen willy-nilly, you don't have your queen.
Right.
Yeah. So she goes to psychically probe Storm, which leads to a scene where she's too preoccupied to notice Kitty. Kitty takes advantage of that, and she lets out Wolverine. Now, Wolverine, obviously, what's going on? Because he's just getting out of the place that messes with his head. The bad guys zap Kitty with an energy weapon because you don't want to put a bullet in a 13-and-a-half-year-old girl. And you get to have, fun Wolverine action. At this point, we have the X-Men at the front, hearing the communication, look like they know what's going on, and it's like, okay, it was a great plan. They were willing to bring us in, but we've been enough of a hazard in the past that they're going to take extra precautions. So we don't have the advantage anymore. So they blow out the roof of the car and, start coming in like gangbusters. I love how they're immediately kind of ready for it. Dazzler does her thing. Nightcrawler peers in. They're flying over. They're moving like a well-organized squad. It's almost as if Cyclops is a good field leader and ready to get them in there.
I love the interaction here between the henchman and the White Queen, where all of a sudden they hear, sirens and stuff, and the one henchman's like, "What? The alert siren? We're under attack. It's the X-Men." And she's like, "Obviously, you fool. Like, go handle it."
Don't just stand there. You move. Yeah. Like, I always hated when villains would be like, "You pathetic peon, you must go and run," unless they were like way, way larger than life. But here it makes sense. It's like, "Oh my God, what's going on?" It's like, you're the guard. Go guard.
Yeah, we're not watching the Batman show from the 60s here, so.
And this next moment, is one that never struck me before, but looking back at it makes me think, holy crap. The White Queen, she has this plan, she's about to win, and the X-Men show up in the right moment to ruin it. So what does she do? She goes, "You know what? All of you guys here versus me, this is bad. So what am I going to do? I'm going to drop the biggest powerhouse in the room." Like, she literally, well, not literally because I'm paraphrasing, but she pretty much goes, "They're going to bust in here, and I'm going to leave you as a friggin' vegetable for them to find." Because I'm going to teach them what happens when you, break my crap like this. And I'm thinking, if that happened, if this wasn't the Dark Phoenix Saga, that would have been Storm's last story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would have been the end of that. The only reason that it didn't happen was because Jean Grey was going through the Dark Phoenix, because her powers were so amplified. Because if you go to the next panel, bam, Jean's there. She didn't make it through the rounds. The other Nightcrawler hasn't even made it there yet.
Right.
So at this point, it's more like Jean just willed herself into the room. And at this stage in her power, you accept that.
Yeah.
And her threat there, they do this really cool thing with her panels when she's eviling out that makes them look jagged and wicked. She walked in on this girl, on this person who's been their enemy, saying, "I'm going to turn your friend into a vegetable. Yeah, I'm going to threaten you. Yeah, we're going to fight." So then we go back to Mankiss and Skipper. They're fighting the X-Men. And then we have the repeat of what Nightcrawler kind of came up with in X-Men number 111, which showed up here and then showed up in X-Men United, with his teleporty punchy thing. Which I find extra funny in the next scene because, the moment you turn the page, he's like, "Man, that was cool. holy nickels her.
Yeah.
Which like you can see happening with someone who isn't like a big brawler, you know?
Yeah.
You never see that, but that's okay. So at this point, we have most of the X-Men gathering back together. You have Wolverine and Colossus coming up with Cyclops, and Cyclops is checking in with them, which I think is really cool because Jean's no longer there to link everyone together. So it's like, all right, hey, everyone cool. Like, I need to know what's going on. Colossus has a chance to start throwing down, and Wolverine's like, yo, the professor left, and, we got to find Storm. So they go to do that, and then they see, like, big ol' psychic battle, which, the White Queen has already floored chunks of the X-Men easily. So it's, like, a great sense of natural escalation. And because it's the Phoenix, the bigger it gets, the more her power wows out. And if you go to the next page, what I really love here is the decision on what to do with the panels. And what I mean by that is you lose the background of the facility, and it's all Firebird, and it's all Jean's power, and it makes it feel like it's so all-encompassing, it's so bludgeoning.
Yeah, this is on page 56 of the trade. What's also interesting about this is they take time to kind of footnote here between 55 and page 56 that it isn't just the power growing, her power growing. She's also physically growing, but she's also essentially picking apart the White Queen by learning her strengths and weaknesses in the process. So she's attacking. It literally says she's now attacking in earnest. It isn't just her going brute force against her. She's methodically bringing her down on many levels.
Yeah, and I love that Storm is there to watch the whole thing and kind of get swept up enough in it where she can see the telepathic battle that's going on. So, like, the White Queen actually gets to a point of desperation where she focuses everything she can into one last attack, and there's this big flare-up. Everything collapses, there's a flare-up, and then Jean walks Storm out of it. And it's one of those scenes where, like, there's so much destruction that you expect nothing, you expect just to find, like, maybe arms sticking out. But instead, like, Jean blows the debris away, and she's like, I got my friend, we're all good. I love that moment where she's like second panel on 57, she's like, relax, Cyclops, we're both none the worse for wear. I'm afraid the White Queen wasn't so lucky. Because at this point, like, actually, you see it a little better very soon, so I won't mention it there. So everyone gathers together, they get out of the complex, and they go to Kitty's house, because, as far as her parents know, she just went for ice cream, and she's been gone. Which, in the next page, they kind of lay into them about, which I think is great, because I feel like a lot of those tiny details get lost nowadays. And he's like, oh, good morning, Mr. Price. He's like, what have you been doing with my daughter? You guys go with your students and you disappear. The malt shop was burned to the ground. We thought she'd been killed till the police identified the bodies they found. And he's like snapping, and the mom's freaking out. And I love where like you just hear Jean think, enough's enough. And mid-sentence he's like, I don't know what your game is, but it's great to see you again. Me and my wife, we absolutely love. And the professor's like, wait, what? And, even more so than that reaction, but the professor not knowing what's going on. Like, Cyclops is like, that? Jean, what the? And
she brings him on board. Part of this is she gets to explain to Cyclops why she did what she did with changing Carmen's mind, but he's accepting of it because not only of her explanation, but because it's Jean. There's that underlying relationship that's being rekindled a little bit at a time. The further you get into it with them, clearly, like there's hints throughout this trade where you see that she at one point she mentions Scott dating someone, and he's like, no, it's we're not dating, we're just friends and all that, but it's little jabs at a somewhat budding relationship, and she uses that. She utilizes that to her advantage over the course of her becoming the Dark Phoenix.
Well, I mean, at this point, they're already in a relationship. I feel like it's more he loves her, she loves him, but she's coming into her own, and all the things that he was uncomfortable with, he's like finding ways to justify in order to not create conflict.
Yeah.
And like even here, like Storm comes over because she's concerned because she's close with Jean, but she's, that's not something you say. Yo, did you just mind blow that dude? So, so she's stopping with a Cyclops. She's like, yo, did Jean just? And he's like, yeah. So his first thought is, I didn't see what happened in the lab. What happened? What was that like? Because he's Cyclops, he needs the whole story. Storm talks about what it was like to see her with all that power and the way she was doing it. And he goes, and what does Cyclops do? He writes it off. He's like, maybe we're imagining things, It's Jean, it's cool. And Storm calls him out. She's like, you don't believe that. Like, we both know something's up, but,
And she refers to it as a wrongness about Jean.
Yeah.
Which she, it just lends to the idea that Scott is justifying it.
Yeah.
And Storm's not necessarily accepting of everything that's going on.
Well, I mean, you really get to see kind of a dichotomy of friendship in these two characters, where Scott is that person who's like, I mean, he's puppy dog in love. Like, he is in that corner no matter what. And Storm is like really tight friendship. Yo, like a Cyclops. Like, if Jean decided that she was gonna, like, hit a crack den and just start shooting up, Cyclops would, like, start tapping the needle for her.
Yeah, yeah.
And Storm would be like, I'm gonna get you... I called the cops. They're about to show up. Here's your invitation to rehab. I ain't watching you do this to yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, at this point, they take a moment to kind of chill and relax again. Because at this point in any modern story... there'd be like a secondary villain attacking or something. But here, they're taking the time to register what happened. They bring back Angel, who was an original member of the squad. One thing I really like here is Angel kisses Jean hello. Angel's always been a little forward, but Jean normally kind of waves him off.
Yeah, not this time.
Yeah. This time, she's like flirting back. And it's like, you're seeing that the parts of her fantasies where she's more forward, where she's more, willing to take chances and do things. It's like, why? It's bleeding through. It's coming out. So Cyclops is like, yo, Angel, we needs to chat. And he knows that the only thing that's going to get them... And Angel's like, if you mean private, then we're going to fly all the way out over here, which I thought was fun. He catches Angel up on what's been going on, a.k.a., the Claremont recap.
Pretty much, yep.
He talks to him about the Hellfire Club. And I love this moment because it kind of it gives like a sneak peek into the Hellfire Club's reach. It's like, yo, we're members of the Hellfire Club. Mm-hmm. Just stuff rich people belong to.
Oh, yeah. When he says we're, he also means Candy Southern.
Yeah.
His female counterpart there.
They have a talk about what's going on. The moment he mentioned Jean's name, she's literally floating there behind them. It's great timing, but she's like, "Oh, you guys have been talking for an hour," and I feel that's more of an excuse. Like, they went off to talk privately. She knows he's distressed. She's like, "All right," and flies over there. Angel's like, "All right, I'm gonna give you guys a moment," and Jean they have a great moment. Like, they relax. And she turns it into, a romantic picnic, which I thought was kind of cool. After that, what happens? They're like, you know what? We'll wait a week, and we're going to take the fight to them. The Hellfire Club came after us. We're going to go see what their operation is. We're going to find out all this stuff.
And while they take it to the Hellfire Club, we're going to pause here and stretch our legs and...
They're taking it to the club, and we taking you to commercials.
So, hang tight. Stay tuned.
And as we're knee-deep in conversations about comic books, I want to give you a chance to help us out while helping out the creators themselves at the same time. And that is through the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund. The Comic Book Legal Defense Fund makes sure that comic creators and companies are safe from any sort of legislation that would harm them or criminalize them. So in order to make sure that our favorite creators keep pushing boundaries and keep creating amazing content, please go to schoolforthegifted.site/podcast/CBLDF. That's schoolforthegifted.site/podcast/CBLDF. Help your favorite creators create the content that you want to see.
And thank you for supporting the show. Now let's get back to class.